Well, we continue our journey today by diving into our opening plenary, bringing together high-level leaders across business, policy, and NGO to solve the leadership equation. How purpose, oopsie, that's just dropped. I'll pick that up for the next person. There we go. How purpose and power can build an inclusive post-COVID world. This session will be moderated by the wonderful Star Jones, a former New York City prosecutor, best-selling author, an Emmy Award-nominated TV host, and she's also the co-founder of the Instant Impact Group, a consultancy firm that assist individuals and companies build their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Star is also part of the Women's Forum editorial board. Please join me in a very warm welcome for Star Jones and her speakers.
Good morning, everyone. So, we all know that the world needs women's leadership, purpose, and power for positive impact, right? In other words, if we don't do it, who is? Okay? Yet, this pandemic, as everyone has pointed out, has thrown us all for a bit of a loop. This morning, I am proud to present the first plenary panel discussion with some of the most purposeful leaders we have. As we look at the leadership equation, how purpose and power can build an inclusive post-COVID world. Let me introduce you to my team. Alexis McGill Johnson, immediately to my right, is the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Bravo. To my far right is Thomas Buberl. I've been working on saying the last name correctly, sir. The Chief Executive Officer and Director of AXA. And in our center is Blessing Omakwu. Aha, yes, a Nigerian-American gender equity evangelist who is the Deputy Director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bravo. Welcome, everyone. Alexis, I am going to start with you. So, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund, you have stepped into the leadership of Planned Parenthood at one of the most critical times in women's health history. What is your leadership looking like now in this new normal? And what do you think is the role of leaders moving this recovery forward? Big question, you go.
Big question, big moment. You know, you're absolutely right. I stepped in actually during a leadership transition. That leadership transition then led into COVID, then led into a race reckoning, then led into the 2020 election, and then to the Supreme Court taking up, the U.S. Supreme Court taking up a case that will could possibly undercut or overthrow Roe v. Wade, which is our constitutional right to abortion in the U.S.
So just a couple of issues, in other words.
Just a couple of issues. Mm-hmm. Any one of them would be destabilizing, right, for an organization, much less a movement. And you know, I think that what I have learned as a leader, and quite frankly a new leader, having never run something as large as this, is to first of all, be transparent and to be vulnerable. Knowing that, you know, particularly our staff, our partners needed to be able to make calculations in a time when they were incredibly anxious, incredibly uncertain. That over-communication, that sharing of decision-making and how you got there, that calming effect of helping manage anxiety, I think has been the most important thing. And then the second thing would just be, you know, being conscious and caring for staff and for other leaders who, really are in a moment that, we say is unprecedented, but it's truly unprecedented.
Absolutely. And Alexis, speaking of being compassionate with employees and team members, Thomas, as the Chief Executive Officer and Director of AXA, I know she is speaking your language because many of us here know all about AXA's longstanding commitment to making a positive difference. I read that you actually believe that AXA, literally one of the world's largest insurance and financial services companies, you believe that in an industry that has historically leveraged risk to its own advantage, it's time for a new approach to move from payer to partner. That is radical thinking, my friend, radical thinking. And so since this world is changing in front of us, what do you see as the purpose of a company doing business in the new normal?
So, purpose has become extremely important because we live in a world where we are searching for the new narrative. How can a business help society to become a better society? In an environment in which we are surrounded by many issues. We are surrounded by COVID, we mentioned it earlier. It has completely changed everything we're used to. We live in an environment in which inequality is rising. And we also live in an environment in which we don't know when the next crisis is coming, and in which we need to take more responsibility for ourselves and for society. And we can feel that today in every dimension. Every discussion I have, be it with a colleague, be it with an NGO, be it with a regulator, be it with a shareholder, be it with a customer, this question around what are you doing for society, how are you changing the world tomorrow, is something that is omnipresent. And so purposeful action is not anymore I'm writing a check and I'm done. Purposeful action means what do you do at the heart of your company to create and to contribute to a better world. And payer to partner is exactly that. How do we move from just paying insurance bills to helping our customers to live a better life, to live a less risky life? And this has been, it's for an insurer it's almost easy because we are in the middle of society that is really our purpose, helping society. And to make sure that we are all collectively engaging in it, we have a long history of, very much being in society, very engaged. We have a association called AXA Hearts in Action that is actually celebrating 30 years of anniversary. But there was a turning point for us last year, which was we redefined our purpose. We did it in a very collective action, and it is something that really drives everybody. And in every discussion, we talk about it, and not only talk about it, but also we launched at our annual General Assembly a so-called AXA Index for Progress, which is to say, look, let's not only talk about purpose, but also let's measure ourselves. What have we said and what have we done? And that's the only way to move forward.
You know, it's interesting because we've asked medicine to do the same thing, to move towards prevention, not just treatment. You want people to avoid the risk so that they don't need to get to the point where they have put themselves in danger. It's a collaborative effort, as you so eloquently point out. And interestingly enough, Blessing, you have focused on women's equality for most of your career. So we're right here in your wheelhouse. You actually describe yourself as a equality evangelist, which means you preach the word, right? Okay. So give us our sermon of the morning. What has motivated your purpose, my sister?
Thank you so much, Star. And actually, I'll start by saying that many years ago, when I was in my first year of law school, I realized that very first year I wasn't going to practice law in the traditional sense. And I began to Google, who are women that have law degrees and are using it in interesting ways? And you were one of them. And so it's so lovely to sit with you today and have this conversation. You've been such an inspiration in my career.
What a sweet colleague of you.
But why I call myself a women's equality evangelist, my work came from a very personal place. My parents were both Nigerian. I was born in the US, but moved to Nigeria when I was younger. And I had a father who adored me and treated me like I was the center of the universe. And so I never for 1 minute imagined that being a girl made me less than. And my father got sick and he eventually passed away. And in that period, the reality that he created for me came tumbling down. I saw the way my mother was treated as a woman, as a widow, and as a leader. She was a pastor in a church. And there are many people who felt that she should not, as a woman, lead the church. And I remember people saying to me, if you were a boy, as your father's first child, you could do something. You could help your mom. You could step in. It was the first time that in my mind I began to see, oh, being female makes me different. And I said to myself at a very young age that I want to work towards ensuring that women never go through what my mother went through when I was younger. And that began my journey in this path. And so over the past few years and across my work, my passion has been, how do I convert people to become believers in gender equality? And so I call myself a women's equality evangelist because of that. My work is rooted in the pain that I've experienced seeing discrimination, but also in the possibilities that I've seen. And I think purpose is both about pain and about possibility, about bringing our personal stories into our work. So often we focus on data and policy, and we don't bring our personal stories into the work that we do, but that for me is key.
Absolutely. And you are preaching about something that we've all talked about as our passion, what wakes you up in the morning. And for me, it's that combination of knowing that, yes, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it makes everybody feel good. But as Thomas and I were talking earlier, making it feel good is not just what we're talking about. We're talking about why it is the business savvy thing to do. It is not just something that makes you feel good, it's gonna make you money. And my dad would say, if it don't make money, it don't make sense, okay? So, Thomas, Blessing, and Alexis, let's do what's the purpose of not only moral, but business savviness? How do you lead with purpose with a business focus? Alexis, you start.
I mean, I think the expectation is from the consumer right now, right? To be, they are incredibly conscious and very values driven. And so, it makes perfect business sense to lead with purpose sense and mission sense. And I think the question that many leaders, many corporate leaders, and nonprofit leaders have to wrestle with is how to ensure that they are living their values in ways, not just for their consumers, but also for their employees. Because the ways in which they are organizing and the way in which I would say it's become a more democratic participation because of social media, because of the ways in which people can have conversations with each other that used to happen in a water cooler. Water coolers only now at our own personal kitchen sinks, right? And so the ways in which people are having these conversations has completely transformed the way that we need to engage, for sure.
What do you think, Blessing?
Well, I think no matter what we do, so I work in philanthropy and civil society, but no matter what we do, we are selling something, whether we're selling a product or a message or a narrative or a campaign, we're all selling something. And to sell, you have to connect with people. And I think what the pandemic has done is it has stripped everyone of BS, if I can say BS. People want real stories. We want authenticity. I think the pandemic allowed us to see people in their homes. Our homes became our offices. We saw people as parents, as caretakers, and more. And I think dividing that compartmentalization between professional and personal, between home and work, is how we begin to lead with purpose. And we begin to say, how do I bring my personal self into my leadership? So when I step into a room in any conversation, I bring my full self, my blackness, my femininity, my Africanness, my spirituality, my depth. I bring all of it into every single conversation. And I think that authenticity is what allows us to connect, whether it's with consumers, with markets, and with others. It's the key for driving purpose in today's age.
Authenticity and integrity. That's what, absolutely. Thomas, mission-driven purpose is literally the foundation of AXA through your leadership. How are the mission-driven leaders succeeding in global businesses right now?
I think we need to combine purpose and business. If purpose is not founded in your business, if you cannot make a difference with your business expressing the purpose, it will not happen. And this means that you need to have your purpose fully integrated in your strategy. When we speak about climate, if we change the topic for 1 minute, it's exactly the same. making a difference in climate will not happen if you just have a great speech. You need to make it part of your strategy. And therefore, for me, diversity and inclusion has to be part of your strategy, and you have to live it every day. And in order to live it, you also have, and I would add to the list, this topic around vulnerability. You have to show that you don't know. I'll give you an example. I'm frustrated now that with the pandemic, we have gone through many difficult times, but it has actually helped us to live a much more flexible life. I don't need to be at work anymore from 8 to 4 o'clock. I don't need to say anymore, here's my private life and here's my business life. It blends in. However, when you look today, how have women benefited from that? They haven't. How has the health of women increased and benefited from it? It hasn't. And so it is through frustration and through realization of what doesn't happen that you make things better and that you talk about it very openly every day and not have a very nice polished discourse, what you've done and what you will do, and without anything happen. So this vulnerability and really being credible in everyday's action, because that's something that happens with a little piece of the mosaic every day. And also my wish for you is, when you leave here today, take something back. If it's only one thing that you're going to do differently when you come back to the office or wherever you are on Monday.
Thomas, if you, yes, clap, please. The pandemic has only exacerbated or shown a spotlight on that which was already unequal, and that would already disproportionately affected women and girls. So, and that's in every aspect of society. So as our resident male ally here on the panel, I will turn to you on this elusive question of how does real allyship between men and women manifest itself, especially in our new normal right now?
So I think it starts with setting yourself ambitious goals. And so what we've done, and it was at the time, it came in the middle of a session, an idea that we didn't agree with. I just said it. We said, look, by 2023, we want to have gender parity in all our leadership, and we want to have closed the gender pay gap. And we didn't agree this with HR, we didn't look at it, but I just felt it was the right moment to say it. Then later on was the question, okay, how do we get there? And the question around allyship there is a very important one, because you cannot get there with big formalities, you cannot get there with big training programs. It is daily work on the ground, which is to say, how can we really help those female leaders to step up? And it starts with something simple. You find yourself every day in a conversation where you find biases, where you find females excluded, where you find a very male language. And it starts with giving instant feedback and say, hey, listen, I think you've made a mistake there, you should say that differently. It goes also to the question of not only talking, but you engaging. So when we spoke about and we did programs of allyship, of mentorship, it is absolutely clear that I'm also a mentor, that I'm also an ally. So every year I have picked one female talent and helped her to develop. And so this daily job, making sure that you are helping people, that you are giving constant feedback, and that you're working with those leaders is how we get there. Ambitious targets plus daily work every day, making it better and better, giving of yourself to let the others benefit from that.
Thomas, it sounds like you're advocating not just mentorship, but sponsorship also when it comes to women in the pipeline, if you will, of leadership. You have to be, when you're a male ally, you have to be the sponsor, the one that really shores up the woman when she's not in the room, not just when she's in the room, but so that when the new projects come up, when the new leadership opportunities come up, you're the one in the room that says, oh, I've got the perfect person for that. And that person may just happen to be a woman or a person of color or a person that's differently abled. That's true diversity and inclusion. Thank you so very much. So Alexis, I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about power for a minute. I'm looking over my notes. You lead the the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. That's the healthcare organization with more than 600 centers across the United States, but also the Action Fund, which is the strong political force and advocacy organization. Two different kinds of seats, but from each of those seats, what does power mean for you?
Oh, I love this question. As a professor of political science by trade, which I consider the study of power, the very definition of power is our ability to get somebody to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. And so when I think about the healthcare side, when I think about what it means for a patient to walk into a health center, with the very foundation of knowing that being able to make decisions about your own body, your own freedom, that your self-determination is at the core of driving your own freedom and imagination, that is an act of empowerment. That is an act of agency. That is an act of control of your life in a way that will also be building skill sets around your own advocacy. So when we see young people come in because they, maybe they need family planning, thank you so much, Gates Foundation, maybe because they need gender affirming care, because they have found their authentic self and found themselves in their body, and thinking about how they are going to, really come alive as their whole authentic selves. It's wonderful to be there in that way and create that power. But we also know that health, it goes beyond health, right? Healthcare itself is politicized. And so in order to actually sustain that advocacy and empowerment, we actually have to fight for it. And the Action Fund has built, over the last decade, we've gone from 500,000 supporters to 17 million supporters across the globe, which I like to say is 5 times more than the NRA in the US. And so that notion of using that power for purpose, using that power to transform the pain, quite literally, of what we're seeing right now happening in a state like Texas, into that power, into that promise and possibility, and thinking about how we use the levers and help people understand that everything that they do has a policy associated with it, and those policies are the things that actually sustain freedom for all. And I think it's really important to have that grounding as power.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. I'm going to stick with power, but this time I'm going to talk economic power, Blessing, because you lead the Gates Foundation largest campaign, Bravo, Goalkeepers. And Goalkeepers recently launched a new campaign with Melinda Gates, as I understand, and other diverse gender activists calling for an investment in women's economic power. That's the power that we're trying to wield, which, by the way, doesn't start until we have equal pay for equal work. Just wanted to point that out. So, what are some of the most urgent investments world leaders need to make to secure women's economic power as the world emerges from this pandemic?
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned earlier that this pandemic only exacerbated what was. And we saw that in the last year. We released a report every year, Goalkeepers. One of the things that we pointed to this year is that an additional 31 million people fell into extreme poverty as a result of the pandemic. And we all know that women have been hardest hit by the economic and social impacts of the pandemic. While men's jobs will be returning and have began to return to pre-pandemic rates, women's jobs have fallen by over 13 million, I believe, since the pandemic began, and continue to fall. And so that campaign was asking everyone to think about, what will you give for women's equality? And I'll quickly read a few lines from a poem that we put out as part of that campaign. It said, "When the world we knew collapsed, we learned it was not Atlas who held up the sky, but our mothers, our sisters, and our colleagues. We saw women hold us up, despite being displaced from the workplace. We saw women look up from teaching, from parenting, from farming, from dreaming, and say, we've been the backbone and the front line. We've been the bread makers and the breadwinners. And this is a year for equity. This is a year for disrupting the idea of power. This is a year for asking questions. And the first one is, what will you give?" When we talk about what needs to be given for women's economic power, a few things. We need to see investments in women's jobs. We need to see opportunities created for women's entrepreneurship. We need to see equal pay, like you mentioned, for all. And not, when we talk about women, sometimes we forget that there are classes of women. We have women of color, we have marginalized women, and pay fluctuates depending on your womanness. But we want to see equal pay for all types of women. And we need to see the caregiving economy revamped. Many women have had to leave the workplace because they carry a disproportionate burden of unpaid care work, of domestic work, of caregiving work. But beyond those investments, one investment that I think is key, and now I'm taking off my Gates hat and wearing my personal hat, I think we need to invest in mindset shifts. We can create all the jobs we want, and we can invest all we want in caregiving. But if mindsets don't shift, we will not see a change in women's economic power. And here's what I mean. For example, if a woman goes to a church, or she watches a film that shows her that being a woman means that you carry the disproportionate burden of care, or if you're told that you should not work because you have children, no matter what jobs are created, you won't take that job, or you'll leave when crisis happens. If you never see women who are economically empowered that look like you, you'll never be able to know what's possible for you. And so I think there needs to be investments in norm shifts. That means investing in women in news. It means investing in new types of storytelling. It means investing in film and art. It means investing in what I call feminist theologians, people who look at scriptures and religion, because I think religion is key to how we think about gender equality, and investing in the theologians who are helping us understand religion in new ways, because for so long it has been co-opted by patriarchal narratives. And so that mindset shift, I think, will be key for women's economic power in upcoming years.
Thank you so very much. Thomas, I'm going to ask you to take on the three-legged stool of power, leadership, and purpose. How do we incorporate that into this business-savvy environment in our new normal?
We just have to do it. I think we've been speaking a lot. We need to now go to doing. And doing means doing it every day, doing little pieces every day. But I would like to come back to the question around power and economic power, because I think we've forgotten one thing. Your power comes from your health power. The healthier you are, the more powerful you are. When I look at what I see and what really makes me afraid is that women have suffered during the pandemic, but it's even worse. Women's put their health last. They have postponed very important treatments. They put the family before their own health. And this is not sustaining or increasing economic power and power in society. So make sure that you put yourself first, that you look after yourself, and that you stay healthy. This is something that really worries me. And that's why also we have decided as a next action to earmark 300 million of investment money to put into companies that are invested in women's health and that help women in particular when it comes to maternal illnesses. Because you see that the number one cause of women feeling bad or women even dying is around maternal health. So I can only tell you, look after yourself, put yourself first. This is your pillar and your base for your power.
Thank you, Thomas. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that our Vice President, Kamala Harris, has made maternal health a centerpiece of her agenda with President Biden and has put it on the front burner of conversation. Alexis, we've done leadership. We have done power. Let's do purpose now. It's been pointed out that over the last few years, we have all been, quote, leading through reckonings. The global pandemic, a worldwide racial reckoning, which we're going to do more of later on in this afternoon, and of course, the Me Too movement. But at the same time, consumers have become much more discriminating about the brands they will patronize, depending on how the brand has responded to all of those reckonings. So what's the role of a corporate leader in supporting mission-driven purpose through these reckonings?
I think the word is they need to be unapologetic. right? They need to be very clear about where their corporate identity is as authentic as, say, their personal brand or identity, because that is the expectation. I think when we look at the core of all of those movements, right, all of those reckonings, what is central to all of them is a fight for freedom, right? That is the animating idea across the board. And so to have a corporate brand stand with being on the right side, right, as we say, right side of history, I think is incredibly important. And again, it's not just for consumers, right? There is a talent, there's a new competitive talent pool out there as a function of the pandemic, where people want value in their work as much as they want value in their lives, and those things are changing as well. So how corporations respond, I think, is really important in that way. I also want to say that it is, just to Blessing's point around the importance of disrupting patriarchy and hierarchy. You know, our brains literally are hardwired to embed stereotypes and believe in those stereotypes by age 10. And literally from 10 to 100, we are unlearning those stereotypes, not just all the great work that we have as individuals. For me, it means that we've actually got to create new structures that support those narratives and embed those in policies, embed those in people, like the gender equality minister in France. Like those are real, tangible ways in which those structures actually create and perpetuate purpose.
Bravo, bravo. We were backstage just cheering on the fact that France has a minister of gender equality. Okay, so that tells you that it is on the front burner. Thomas, I realized in preparing for this, it's a very specific position to be an insurer during a pandemic. And as I was going over, I said, AXA is one of the biggest insurers, and every single person is affected by a global pandemic. And then, as we've pointed out, minority, women, underserved have been disproportionately carrying that burden. And the burdens are what? Financial, sanitary, health, every aspect, right? Actually, how did COVID-19 affect the way AXA does business?
So, I mean, look, that pandemic for us was also a shock like it was for everybody. And we were all of a sudden put into various challenges. I mean, number one that we all experienced was, how do we make sure that we bring our colleagues into a safe space? Luckily, we had invested very early on in technologies that would enable us to do it remotely. So that was actually our least challenge. Very quickly, we got the 170,000 colleagues into a good space. And there were stories like people unscrewing their desktops in Indonesia, but it all worked out. The more challenging part was how do we help our customers and society? Because all of a sudden, everywhere, there were people needing help. And so we decided in sometimes, because when you are in a corner, you just have to take liberating decisions. So for example, we have very good teleconsultation services in many countries. And because it was so difficult, we said in some countries, okay, we just open it for the whole country for free, everybody can come. And this was something that was extremely appreciated. We did over 500,000 teleconsultations. As you can imagine, the services were completely overloaded. We also worked a lot around, in particular on women, what can we do to help women in particular with the violence at home. And so we opened here in France, for example, a specific hotline to help in particular women that were experiencing difficulty at home. And so all of these services were widely used. We obviously then went further and said, look, how can we help on the vaccination? How can we get masks out of China? Because, I mean, you are all wearing masks today, which is has been a common good. 1.5 years ago, we didn't know, how to get them. And so we were full steam everywhere to make sure we could help. And it has really worked. And if you look at our customer satisfaction, we measure that every day. It has actually significantly increased. So today, as we speak, 97% of our customers see us at market average or above. Our internal satisfaction, we measure it in ENPS, has almost doubled during the crisis. So it was the engagement, the joint engagement internally, but also the joint engagement with our customers and with public authorities to do whatever we could. I mean, yes, we made many mistakes, but at least we cannot say we didn't do anything.
Using your power to benefit your clients, your customers, and your employees. Oh, my word. What a radical thought. Thank you so very much, Thomas. Blessing, we're going to stick with that power and purpose right now. There's another program that you're working with, the co-creator of Room 5. So I want to talk a little bit about that. That's an initiative by the Rockefeller Foundation in Brookings that you are convening some of the foremost experts in the whole area of gender equality, thought leaders, right? With a goal of advancing gender equality, literally, with calls to action. What do you think that process has taught you about uniting purpose and power for equality?
Thanks, Star. I mean, often we talk about the what of work, and we don't talk about the how of the work. And this process I've been a part of the past 2-3 years. So Rockefeller Foundation in Brookings brings together thought leaders across each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I believe everyone here has heard of the SDGs. I want to believe you have. But I work on SDG 5 for gender equality. I work across all the goals, but lead Room 5, which is focused on gender equality. And when I first joined that group, I remember that I looked at the table and everyone looked the same. I was the only person who looked different in every way on that table. And I said, we need to think more about intergenerational leadership and diverse leadership. And I salute, at the time, Michelle Nunn, who was the CEO of CARE, was leading that group. And she said, well, why don't you come and lead this with me? And through that process, I've learned the importance of intergenerational leadership. I've seen what it looks like to learn with humility from generations before who have been doing this work for decades, but also what it means to listen to younger generations who have important, incredible new ideas and new ways of doing things. I've also learned the importance of new types of messengers for the work. We've been bringing in diverse actors, people, whether it's people working in faith community or in media across the space, and seeing how when we bring different types of voices to the table, we can get our message further and faster out there.
You know, it's so interesting you talked about someone else bringing you to the table to add your leadership to the equation. We have a friend who is just the most prolific speaker, Donna Brazil in the United States. And Donna says, when you finally get your seat at the table, remember to scooch over and make room for somebody else to sit there.
Absolutely.
And that literally is what happened so that you could bring a whole nother perspective. That's magnificent. Thank you. In our last minute, the Women's Forum, we want us to walk out of here having accomplished something. No one wants to sit on this panel and just have talked for the morning. This is the time for the call to action. So if I had the ability to wave my black girl magic wand and ask you each to tell us what we need to do when we walk out this door, I'm passing the wand, okay? Thomas, you have the black girl magic wand. Now, you never thought you'd get that.
So you have and will experience here a firework of inspiration. I want you to take one piece away that remains from the firework that you are doing differently when you get back to whatever you do on Monday.
Oh, I like that. Blessing, the wand is in your hand.
Thank you. Well, we're in Paris where we had Generation Equality Forum earlier this year, and I think that it's so important and symbolic that we're here again in Paris talking about gender equality. But here's the thing. In 1995, we had the Beijing Conference for Women where we talked about gender equality. We knew what to do in 1995. Like, this is not new. Nothing we are saying is new right now. Now it's a time to do it. So what do we need to do? Number one, get informed. If you haven't heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, they are a blueprint to get us to a world that is equal and fair by 2030. If you want to learn more, this is my shameless plug. Go to thegatesfoundation.org/goalkeepers and learn more. But get informed no matter how you can. And number two, mentor someone, please. There's so many women, there's so many people across the world who are looking for mentors. If you're in this room, you probably have something to give. Find one person, if you're not mentoring, to go out and mentor today.
Got it. Okay, the wand is in your hand, Alexis.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. From Argentina to Ireland, there is a massive multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-generational, inclusive movement around fighting for gender power and equality and justice. And it is so thrilling and exciting because it is actually building power and transforming the ways in which we are building a different future. And no matter where you are, the fight is at your doorstep. And so figuring out ways to get engaged locally, do that deep work, and make sure we stay globally connected to build that movement forward is the most important thing that I think we should be thinking about right now. You can also go to PlannedParenthood.org and find out how to get engaged specifically around the fight in the US. But I think that it is so critical for all of us to be thinking about how we're connecting all of these dots to ensure that the future for my girls, our girls, are going to transform so that by the time they are 11, they don't have those stereotypes in their head, and that we are transforming the world for them.
When power and purpose meets leadership, this is what you get. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the forum. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Star. Thank you to all our incredible speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for them. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wonderful.